And so joining us for the next hour is Gerald Celente to talk about a host of issues and get where he thinks we're going in the future. And, of course, you can also link through and go to his website, trendsresearch.com. Gerald Celente, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Alex, thank you for having me.
You bet. We got 3 minutes before we break, but just lay out in the first 3 minutes a little bit about yourself and what trend research is.
Well, current events form future trends. So we look at the major social, economic, political, geopolitical, environmental, consumer. We look at over 300 different categories on a daily basis worldwide, looking for those major trends that are shaping the future. For example, the current event today that everyone should know about is that what Citigroup announced they're firing 50,000 people. I mean, and they're not going to make those jobs up in the Circuit City or Starbucks. So we look at this data and we analyze it, but we do so as political atheists. We're not. Both of these parties, we have nothing to do with them, and so we look at events for what they are and not the way we want them to be. And that's what really stops a lot of people from seeing the future. The other thing is when you look at economic forecasts, political forecasts, they do it one-dimensionally. They don't look at all the other interlocking fields.
Yes.
So that's what we do differently than most others. The system that we have, we call globalnomic. It means including the entire world, from the word globus and nemine, to manage, because trends can be managed. You can see what's happening and then take the measures necessary to protect yourself or to profit from what the future may bring.
Absolutely. When we come back, I want to get into the fact that the NSA uses its snooping system not so much to even, quote, spy on the individual, but to see major trends and try to get ahead of it, to control it, and to give that info to select inter-group corporations. The government, the big corporations, they know what you and I know, Gerald, and what you're so good at. They just don't like advertising real systems to the public.
Well, yes and no, because we've worked with a number of the major corporations, and that's our business. And I have to tell you, there are corporations like Ford, for example. They came to visit us in the 90s, and we thought we were talking to dead people. And we said, why waste our time working with these people when we know that what we give them is not going to be implemented? So, we assume that they know. But from our experience, Alex, most of them are well behind the curve. Examples, look at the major corporations today and how they're suffering at so many different levels.
We're going to talk about that when we get back. And we're going to discuss the key, what you just said. People look at the world the way they want to see it. Ladies and gentlemen, that is delusion. That is a fraud. Don't you want to really know how the world works? Don't you really want to count instead of having your thoughts fed to you? Gerald Celente is our guest. We'll be right back after this quick break.
The Genesis Communications Radio Network proudly presents The Alex Jones Show, because there's a war on for your mind.
There's not a better trend forecaster than Gerald Celente. The man knows what he's talking about, CNBC. Gerald Celente has a knack for getting the zeitgeist right. USA Today, The Economist magazine wrote that he has a network of 25 experts whose range of specialties would rival many university faculties. When CNN wants to know about top trends, we ask Gerald Celente. It goes on and on. And Gerald, I want to get into how you integrate all these different sectors of the economy, the society, how you come up with your trends that have turned out to be so accurate. But before we do that, perhaps we should get the listeners who don't know who you are to learn a little bit about Gerald Celente, how you got into this particular field and became a leader in it, or the leader in it, and basically some of the predictions that you've made that have been so accurate, and where you see us going, fleshing out the discussions that you've had about basically complete breakdown of society and martial law type scenarios.
Well, the way I began my career, after graduate school, I managed the mayoral campaign for the fellow running for office in Yonkers, New York, and it was 1971. And from there, they sent me up to Albany. I did such a great job. And I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate, which, by the way, was the worst job I ever had. You know, it's a disgusting spectacle to see grown men grovel, particularly from a kid that was grown up in the Bronx. And, you know, when you'd watch all these people, I'd be talking to a buddy, you know, we'd be in the chambers, in the Senate chambers, and a senator would walk in. My buddy would leave me to go help the senator sit down, you know, pull his chair out, you know. So when my friend would come back, I'd say, what's the matter? You know, the guy can't sit down on his own. He needs some help. So that was I got to see the insides of government. From there, I went to St. John's University, and I taught probably one of the nation's first courses in American politics and campaign technology in 1972. From there, I went to Chicago, and I was a government affairs specialist working for segments of the chemical industry and other parts of the industry, and between Washington and Chicago. As a matter of fact, I was in D.C. When the first energy crisis hit in 1973. Jimmy Carter later becomes president, and the Iranian conflict breaks out. And I had been following this thing for years, Alex. You know, I knew how the CIA overthrew the democratically elected government of Iran and Mossadegh and how the Savak, the secret police of the Shah, was only second to the SS. You know, it was a brutal regime. When the revolution started to happen in Iran, I knew it was real because I knew of the pent-up hatred that they had against this guy. Jimmy Carter goes to spend New Year's Eve with the Shah and his wife, and he and Rosalind. And in those days when the president came back from overseas, it was a big deal. He walks up to the microphones after walking out of the helicopter on the White House lawn, and Jimmy Carter announced to the American people that the Shah was the island of stability in the Middle East. At that moment, I became a political atheist. I'd been around long enough. I knew the game. And then the second thing that hit me was, what will be the implications of what's going on? And I realized that gold and oil prices would increase. So I started to speculate in both those fields. And I was only a kid. I was in my early 30s, you know, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I did know enough that I knew that the American public was getting one story, and then there was a whole other story on the international scene. I made enough money from that where I quit my job, and that's when I began the Trends Research Institute in 1980, always under the understanding that current events form future trends, but if I look at them, as you said going into the break, without looking at them the way I want them to be, the way I wish them or hope them to be, and just the way they are, and let the data speak for itself, then you can see a clear direction of where the future is heading. And you know, it's like going to a doctor. You get a diagnosis. You don't call the doctor an SOB if you don't like his economic or political diagnosis. You accept it for what it is and work from that parameter. And that's what we do. We see the trends the way they're laying out in front of us, where they're going to go, and then we work around that direction, not trying to redirect it in our minds so that we hope for something different.
Well, now specifically, because we have limited time with you, I could talk to you for 10 hours. You've got so much information. Briefly, I know you don't like to brag, but no brag, just fact, as John Wayne would say. Break down some of the predictions and trends, the projections that you've made that have unfortunately come true. And I say unfortunately because your analysis is pretty much identical to mine and many other experts I'm interviewing about, on the good side, total depression, breakdown of society, police state. On the bad side, Road Warrior, Mad Max, 10,000 BC, just lawless third world bands of. I mean, that's what you're talking about now, and that's where all the trends are headed, and government is doing everything it can to accentuate that. So let's break down some of your track record and then get into what's happening currently and then into the future, sir.
Yeah, well, I guess my first big forecast came in 1980. Actually, it was January of 1987. And I had predicted that there'd be a stock market crash that year, and the Wall Street Journal gave me credit for that one as well. From there, the next big one was with I had in my book Trend Tracking. As a matter of fact, I came out and said that there would be a new third party. This was in 1988, and for some reason I said that Ross Perot would be the type of candidate that would kind of head this kind of party. And in those days, nobody knew who Ross Perot was. From there, my other big forecast in the consumer end had to do with gourmet coffees, the organic foods, water in the early 80s, a big water trend, bottled water, a whole variety of natural healing trends. Matter of fact, one of the early books I worked on in 1986 was called Natural Healing. So I got a very good understanding of that field as well. And again, this is what really differentiates me from a lot of the other trend forecasters, in that I get involved in a lot of the fields where I see things going and understand them at a different level. So those are some of the things. Then, back going into the economic crisis, we had then forecast the 1990 recession, how long it would last, and the 1997 foreign currency crisis,